Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Sylvia Knits Stuff. My name is Sylvia, I'm 35 years old, and I live right outside of Paris, France. And on this channel, I talk to you about knitting and sewing, and today we're doing a knitting podcast. It's been a while. Every time it's been a while, I feel like I always say the same thing, but between this knitting podcast and the last, I did put out a knitting fails video and also a sewing podcast, so thanks to those of you who watched that, who commented. And I had been meaning to film a new podcast like this for a while, but I got pretty sick. Nothing major, just like a really nasty cold, and haven't been really feeling up to talking for an extended period of time. I still have a little bit of a cough, but I think we're okay for today. Okay, and as you can see, I've got some finished objects hanging behind me, and I am also wearing one. So let's just hop into that. So my first finished object is my Rococo top, which is a pattern by Sari Nordlund. And it is a lace, it's a little like tank top, camisole, whatever you want to call it, with this big lace yoke here. And then the same thing is repeated on the back. So the back matches the front exactly. Then in the pattern, she has you knit 5 inches or 12.5 centimeters of stockinette and then the same amount of ribbing. However, I decided to change it up a little bit. I just did more stockinette and less ribbing and made it a little bit longer in general. I wanted to be able to wear it with lower rise jeans since those are kind of coming back in style. And I recently thrifted a pair of boot cut Levi's that hit just below the belly button, and I thought that would go really nicely with this top. And so it hits right around the waistline of those jeans as well. And also, for my millennials out there, remember when we were in high school and college and you know, you'd walk and your flares go when they hit each other as you walk? Well, that happens with these boot cuts, and it's so weird. Just hearing that kind of puts me back in that moment. I was like, I haven't heard this sound in quite a while, I think. Anyway, moving on from that. The yarn that I used for this is from a French yarn dyer called Okkult. It is his Thèbes Méri-Lin base, so it is a 90% merino and 10% linen base, and it is singles, and it comes in like a basic standard singles yardage. It's 366 meters per 100 grams. The colorway that I used is this like bright neon green, which is called Les Flammes d'Osiris. I always put everything in the description. You have the name of the pattern, the name of the yarns that I use, and I also keep my Ravelry up to date, so that is also linked in the description. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, you feel free to check that out. However, I have found that I'm just not a big fan of knitting with singles. I feel like you either love them or you either don't really like them. I haven't heard that many people feel kind of like ambivalently about singles. I don't remember if I got into this last time, because last time I did have this on the needles, but I find that it's easy to kind of stick your needle into the yarn. Even if it isn't plied, it's not like, it's kind of like sticking it in between the plies, but it's in the yarn itself because there is only one ply. So you have to watch out for that. This yarn, it's 10% linen, and not a fan. Because the linen, the 10% linen is just like little bits of plant matter. I asked about that last time and someone confirmed like, yes, the linen is just those like little bits of plant. So there's sometimes these longer or shorter little pieces of what looks like vegetable matter to me. I just don't really like it. I mean, wearing it is fine. It's comfortable and I have no issues with that, but it's just like between knitting with singles in general that I found I don't like that much, and then having this 10% plantiness going on, I don't think I'll be working with this base again. For this top, I chose to knit the size 3. I had done a small gauge swatch in stockinette, and I hit gauge with the recommended needles. I think the recommended ease is 0, but a size 3 would put me at 5 centimeters of negative ease. and a size 4 would put me at 5 centimeters of positive ease. So I decided to do the negative ease instead, and I'm glad that I did because I do have a bit of gaping here at the bust. You can see that my bra is sticking out, which is a very common problem that I have with tank tops. I think I might try to thread some elastic into the I-cord that goes all around and see if that can kind of close it up a little bit. You can see that I do have negative ease here at the bust because it's not kind of like totally tenting over my bust and going down. It's kind of curving around and then going down, which I think is a better look when you have a big difference between your high bust, between your bust apex and your waist, because you get less of that tent effect. So I think I'm going to continue sizing down for things like that. I just think it looks a bit better. And I must say that knitting this was definitely a bit of a slog. This lace chart, it's 69 rows. And sure, you don't have that many stitches on the needles, but you don't really ever get a break. The wrong side rows, you're often doing decreases and all sorts of other things. There's like K3 together, P3 together, there's slip, slip, slip knits. There's bobbles, there's wrap stitches, like a lot of different things going on, and it's always super intense. So for me, it took a really long time to get through this, especially because like you get through it once, you finish the chart and you're like, yay! And then you have to do it all over again for the back. Not sure how well you can see that there, but it's the same thing. So I would only pick it up, do a little bit here and there, and then towards the end, I finished this 2 weeks ago, I think, a week ago. And I was getting through the lace chart, and then I just made the decision. I was like, this has been on the needles for quite a few months now. Let's just get through it. And so I pushed myself through that second chart, finished it, and then once I was joined in the round, it was smooth sailing. For my bind off, I did a sewn bind off, but I did change it up a little bit. I personally have had a hard time finding information on how to do an Italian or tubular bind off, like a sewn bind off for twisted rib, because I've done it for a twisted rib, but with the same instructions as usual, and I find it doesn't look great. No, I don't have any examples here with me with the other finished objects, but I find that because the twisted rib, it's kind of like going like this, and then when you do the regular sewn bind off, then you got these two lines here coming out of your row of twisted stitches, and it just doesn't look great, or your column of twisted stitches. I had searched, and I couldn't really find anything, and then I think someone on Reddit linked to a video from Roxanne Richardson about how to do this, how to do it. And I was like, jackpot. And so I watched her video and I was like, oh my God, why are there so many steps to this thing? She has you separate your knits and your purls onto 2 needles. So like all your knits on one, all your purls on the other. She has you remount all of your knit stitches. So they're mounted with the back leg. So it's like, so they're mounted twisted basically, I think. You're either twisting them or untwisting them. I don't remember. And then she goes through and grafts them kind of like for a sock toe with the 2 separate needles. And I just watched that and I was like, I have a lot of stitches to bind off. Well, not, it actually wasn't for this project. It was for another one where I had fewer stitches, but still. I was like, I don't want to do that. And I read the comments and someone asked like, oh, could you do it without separating them? Could you do this, or that? And she was like, there are lots of different ways it's possible. I just thought it would be easier and more like intuitive if you're used to doing a regular sewn bind off, if you do it like that, because the movements are the same. So then I decided I was going to try something. I decided to do the sewn bind off, but anytime I worked into a knit stitch, I would work it twisted. I took a short video of me doing this when I was doing it on these shorts here that we'll see later. So when you are working a sewn bind off and you go into your knit stitch knitwise, instead of doing that, I inserted it knit-wise, but like if I were knitting through the back loop. So I inserted it through the back loop. And then when I had to go into my knit stitch purlwise, instead of going purlwise regularly, I went in purlwise as if I were doing a twisted purl. So also through the back loop coming up from behind. If you know how to twist a knit and twist a purl, you know, this should hopefully make sense to you, but I will also insert the little video of me doing it. Otherwise, all the other steps are the same. So you're going to work your purl stitches the same, and you're just going to work your knit stitches twisted, and it gives a really nice effect. It really does look like that twisted stitch just continues and rolls off the edge. I think what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to take a picture of the hem of this top, and I'm also going to take a picture of the neckline of my Evelyn top, which are both knit in fingering weight. And they're both knit in fingering weight, and they both have twisted rib. The Evelyn top is done with an Italian bind off, like a standard Italian bind off, and this one has my twisted Italian bind off. So you can really see the difference and how much better this other method looks. So yeah. Next up, I have my Curious crop. I believe this was also on the needles last time I talked to you guys, because I finished this a while ago. This is a pattern by Lydia Morrow, and it's just a pretty simple little crop tank top. It also has bust darts, so you can see that there's this shaping kind of that pulls out here, making it 3D, so it has more space for the boobies. And the point of doing bust darts is basically to bring it down kind of in the front. So you can see if I turn this around, there's more fabric here in the front, because when you have boobs, that will often pull your knit out forward, thus shortening it. So this pattern has a bunch of different sizes of bust darts based on the difference between your upper bust and your bust apex. So you can really customize it to fit you much better, which is really nice. And it was my first time doing bust darts. It's just short rows. If you know how to do a short row, you can do bust darts. It's not really super complicated. Now that it's been washed and blocked, I think things smoothed out a bit. I think on one side when I was doing my bust darts, I dropped one of the stitches and it looked kind of wonky, but just looking at it like this, I can't really tell where things went wrong. So that's good. It comes in two different views, so you can either choose to do this little hole cutout, or you can choose to leave it out and have a completely like filled in front. I think I saw someone either on Instagram or Ravelry that also decided to put the hole cutout instructions on the back. So there's a hole cutout on the back, so that's a fun modification. I personally knit a size 3, and I used 2 different yarns. The main color, I used a yarn from Céline. It was her sock base. And I think the colorway is called Purple Mood, but it's just like a basic undyed with lots of different purple speckles in different colors. And then I also used a contrast color. This forest green is from Lain'amourée, and it's her 100% merino fingering base called Athéna, Athena, and the colorway is called Se balader en forêt. The pattern doesn't call for you to put any contrast at the bottom, and I thought it might be too abrupt to do this whole little bottom band in my contrast color, so I just did a few rows down here of contrast, which I think looks really nice. Because when you do this folded over bottom, you do a row of purls here to have that bottom edge really even. And so what I did was knit the row of knits before, that row of purls, and the row of knits after in that green color. It's like a really dark forest green. It tends to show up a lot darker and blacker on camera. I've also started filming with the back camera of my phone, so I can't really tell how well centered things are when I show them to you. But I know the video quality is much better. There's ups and downs with this, so hopefully you can see this well. As for sizing, I did knit the size 3 because I usually knit a size 4 or large in most things. And here she has you pick your size based on your upper bust measurement. So here, instead of your bust, and then you compensate for that with the bust darts. So I knit the size 3 with the size 3 bust darts. And my takeaway from that is I think I probably could have done a size 4 anyway. I can wear it, but it feels quite tight around my waist. And also, I guess I'm short-waisted. I've never really given any thought to that. I need to hang this back up because my arm is getting tired. I've never really given any thought to the fact of whether I'm short-waisted or not, but I find that since this bottom band here is very tight, it cinches in a lot, it wants to sit at the smallest part of me at my natural waist. And then what happens is that I get bunching and excess fabric. So I think maybe if I do this again, I think I would maybe go up a size, probably to the same size bust darts, and remove a little bit of length from the body. Other than that, I'm really thrilled with the fit because, like, as we see with this, I often have issues with gaping with tank tops, and this actually fits really, really nicely. Can't really be bothered to be changing today, but I think I'll dig up some footage of me wearing this and insert it in so you guys can see it. I have another top that was not yet on the needles when I talked to you guys last time, and this was something that I enjoyed knitting oh so much. This is my Stromboli top. It's a pattern by Caitlin Hunter, and I knit it in, I think, perhaps one of my favorite yarns ever. This is the Merino silk from Dyevergent yarn, and it's 50% merino, 50% silk. The colorway is called Daylily, and it's this gorgeous variegated orange, like it goes into kind of more yellowy tones and some slightly darker speckling, and it's just stunning. It was gorgeous to work with, just so soft. It is definitely a little bit delicate. I think if you manipulate it too much, it fuzzes a bit, but love it. Absolutely love it. For the Stromboli, I knit a size 2. The recommended ease is a lot. Something like 15 inches, or I don't remember exactly, but a lot. And I decided to do the size 2 for a few different reasons. I'm gonna hang this back up behind me so I think you guys can still see it hanging there. The recommended yardage for size 2 was already 1,000 meters of yarn. I only had 2 skeins of this gorgeous yarn, and I was like, okay, we're gonna make it work. We're going to get this top out of 2 skeins of yarn. I was not a huge fan of how the sleeves looked. They're just this like faux cable motif running all the way down the sleeves, so in a different direction than on the body, because you're knitting in a different direction. And I figured if I left off the sleeves, hopefully it would be okay, even having 200 meters less than what was recommended. And I think the size 2 still put me within the range of recommended ease. I did do my swatch. Everything was hunky-dory. We were right on, bang on gauge. So I used the recommended needles and knit my top. I had a mini knit along with a knitting YouTube friend, Lauriane from the French channel L'Eau Demoiselle, and we both knit it together. She decided to add length to hers, and she kind of regretted it later because it grew so much. When I finished mine and I tried it on, I'll show you guys, I'll have a little video here. It was super cropped, but I knew, looking at Caitlin's pictures and knowing that my gauge swatch was fine, that it was gonna grow. But it was very much like a trust the process kind of thing, you know? Because it had a lot of growing to do. And I did a little Instagram reel showing that before and after as well, because it was a really major difference. I wanted to be super careful with my yarn usage because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get this whole top out of my 2 skeins. And so I really weighed every single repeat of the pattern as I went along. Like, eventually I realized I was going to make it. It was going to be okay. I probably could have added a little bit of sleeve if I wanted to, but I really didn't want to, so I didn't. But in the end, size 2 on gauge, I used 180 grams of yarn, and my 2 skeins were really generous in terms of yardage. I had 250 grams to begin with, but even if I had had 200, it would have been okay because I had 30 something left over. And yeah, I'm just so in love with this. Working on this was an absolute joy, between like the color of the yarn, but also just like the texture. It's so soft, so gorgeous. There's one thing that I'm a bit perplexed about, because silk is supposed to be very robust. Like, parachutes were made out of silk before synthetics were used for that. This is very delicate. This feels much more delicate than like a 100% merino to me. I had cast on once. I think I didn't have enough yarn, so I had to frog my cast on and do it again. And even that just fuzzed up my yarn quite a bit. So why is this 50% silk more delicate if silk is supposed to be a stronger fiber? If anyone knows, let me know. It's a lace that I really enjoyed, because something like this is super complex. You never get any repetition. It's just, you need to have your brain on at all times. This, however, like, you can see there's a couple different motifs going on here. There's this kind of V, you've got your faux cables and all of that. You know, you're changing, you're doing something different every row, but it's also really easy to memorize, and it's a bit more relaxing and more brainless to work on. I don't know, I think this kind of lace I like quite a bit. I mean, it's cool that I was able to finish the Rococo and be like, yes, I did that. I did this really complex lace top. Cool. But this was much more of an enjoyable knit for me personally. And then my last finished object, I don't think I had this on the needles last time either. I started it at around the same time as the Stromboli. So these are the Ripple Buttshorts, which is a pattern by Jessie May. And I used 2 different yarns. This hand-dyed, variegated, superwash merino yarn from Hawari Bazaar. It's her Scarab worsted base, but really it's quite a thin worsted. It's very much like more of a DK, I would say. And it's the colorway Singularity. So I use that for the waistband here and for the ribbing here at the bottom. And then for the main color of the body of the shorts, I used a non-superwash yarn that I bought in Italy from a store called Campolmi Filati. And it's a yarn that I find a bit puzzling. So this pattern is designed for DK weight yarn, so I used a kind of DK worsted for this. And then this yarn from Campolmi Filati is called Sport. Is it a sport weight? No, it is not. You get it in 100 gram balls, and there are 250 meters in these 100 gram balls, which I feel like puts it very much in a DK kind of yardage. But I think it must be more airily spun, I'm not sure, because it really does knit up more of like a worsted or Aran, in my opinion. The guy in the store when I bought this last year in Italy, he told me it was a DK weight. And then so when I looked on Ravelry and I saw that it said Aran, I was like, what? It's called Sport. The guy in the store told me it's a DK, and then it says it's an Aran on Ravelry, so I have no idea what this yarn is. But I decided to use them together, and I think it worked out pretty well. I knit a size large, as I usually do in Jessie's patterns, and I did have to make one adjustment. Like, I noticed as I was knitting my main color that the stitches seemed a lot bigger than the stitches with my contrast. And so I decided to just check my row gauge while I was working, realized that my row gauge, like I had fewer rows in my row gauge, so then I should adjust the amount of rows I did between increases. Because the construction is pretty simple. It's slightly reminiscent of a raglan. While you cast on, you do some stockinette for the back of for the inside of the waistband, a row of purls also, like for the curious crop for the bottom hem. Switch to doing this twisted rib. While you're doing this twisted rib, you also have to do a row with some yarn overs to make holes for the little tie at the waist, which is also an I-cord, which she has you start knitting that I-cord. So it's the first step is to do the I-cord. You can either choose to encase the I-cord as you are folding that waistband, or you can choose to kind of wiggle it in after using a safety pin. She doesn't give you this idea in the pattern, but I realized it's like, if I pin the I-cord inside of the waistband, it's going to make it a lot easier. It's not going to be like falling out or wiggling around. And so I thought that worked really well. If you ever have to do something like that, highly recommend pinning. You don't need a lot of pins. I think I just pinned it like here, here, and here. It was super easy. After you do your whole waistband, then she has you do short rows here, here, versus here. So all of this is short row shaping here to give you some more butt space, which is good because I have a big butt. And I've worn these quite a bit already, so you can see they've gotten a bit fuzzy. I'm not sure how well these will hold up, but I think the fact that I chose a non-superwash will hopefully help. Anyway, getting distracted. So you do the short rows and then you just go into these increases here. So it's almost like a raglan where you have an increase point here and an increase point here and then an increase point here and here. And you just knit, 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 and then you do an increase row and you knit and you do an increase row. And so I did one increase row fewer to make up for the fact that my row gauge was off. And honestly, the fit is perfect. Like, it hits me right at the waist. And so I'm really, really glad that I removed that, because if not, I would have had 2 inches, I think, more of length, and it would not have fit nearly as well as it does now. I decided to make them a little bit longer. So the pattern is called durable butt shorts, and they're basically just supposed to cover your butt. But I wanted them to have a little bit more coverage. I knit 40 something rounds on the leg. I then switched back to my contrast color and did my ribbing in that. And this is the project that I first did the twisted Italian bind off for. Not sure how well you can see this, but yeah, just looks pretty nice. Okay, let's move on to works in progress. And I technically have one that was on the needles last time. If you remember last time, I had some socks, and I had told you that I had started these socks over, I think 3 times already. Well, you know, I guess 4th time's the charm. I think they must have looked very similar, but these are my socks. What happened last time was I had cast on 56 stitches. Because like for most of my socks, I've done 56 stitches, and it fits perfectly fine. But maybe I've become a tighter knitter, I'm not sure. Or maybe just because the sock yarn is a bit thin. I did the leg, I did the strong heel, my calculations worked out well. Because I think last time I also explained that I had rewritten the strong heel pattern from a DPN version to just an in the round version to make it make sense to me, because I don't knit on DPN. So when it says knit to the end of the needle, I'm like, how many stitches is that? I have no idea. And so I rewrote that, did the heel, tried it on to see if the heel fit, The heel fit marvelously, but the leg was strangling my leg. I was like, whoa, let's start over. I cast on 60 stitches, and I'm calling them my uneven rib socks. Why uneven rib? Let me show you. What is the best way to show this? Not like this, Sylvia, not like this. If you knit socks in 1x1 rib or in 2x2 rib, then when you're knitting the foot and you're only doing the ribbing on the top, it's not going to be even, because you're going to start the top of your foot with a knit and end it with a purl. And visually, there's something about that bothers me. I want it to be even. And so I played around in Stitch Fiddle and got kind of like a ribbed motif with stitch counts that would make it be even once I'm just knitting on the foot. And I'm not sure how well centered it is here, but for example, I start and I have 2 knit stitches, 3 purls, then I do 4 knit stitches, 3 purls, and then I do 2 knit stitches, 2 purls, 2 knit stitches, 3 purls, 4 knit stitches, 3 purls, and so on and so forth. So it's an uneven rib, but it's still like a mirror image of itself. The yarn, I've presented it before. This is the sock yarn from Artemis Yarns. The colorways are Bioluminescent and Coral Reef, and these are from a sock set that I bought from her last year, I think. Will these socks be done next time? Stay tuned. I must admit, I haven't had that much of a sock mojo this year. 2023 was a major year of socks for me. Like, I feel like I finally got comfortable with sock knitting and I just went sock mad. And thanks to that, I have a bunch of hand knit socks. But since the beginning of this year, the sock knitting has definitely calmed down a bit. I have knit maybe 4 pairs of socks this year. And to give you an idea, last year I knit 18 pairs of socks in the year. A third of them ended up being gifts, but still. I'm gonna do that strong heel again. I recalculated it for 60 stitches. It's on the Ravelry page if you're interested. Once again, I have not tested it for 60 stitches yet, but my 56 stitch version worked out well. So hopefully the 60 stitch version also works. Let's get into the fun stuff. So I brought a project out from the project graveyard. This is a funky project bag from Arcoiris Yarns, a French yarn dyer. Not sure how well you can see that with her little logo there. And it's just the cutest little Chibi Miyazaki characters. Studio Ghibli. This is the Okkult sweater by Lucienne Tricote, or Elise Hood is her name. Lucienne Tricote is her little company brand name. It is a Halloween sweater. It's a circular colorwork yoke, and it has little upside down crosses. It has skulls, and then after the skulls, there's bats. The yarn that I'm using for this is the same exact yarn I'm using for the socks. Also Artemis Yarns sock yarn. And the 3 colors that I'm using, so this dark purple, this kind of like grayish lighter purple, and this gold, are from her Legends collection, which is a collection of yarns that she dyed inspired by paintings by John Williams Waterhouse, maybe? Different paintings that inspired different colors, and she sent you the postcards of the paintings along with your order so you can see where the inspiration came from. And I think Natasha has this amazing sense for color, and she really replicated those colors from the paintings really well. And I think these 3 colors being from the same collection, they work really well together. The main color, this dark purple, it's called Pithos, Pithos, P-I-T-H-O-S. The golden color is Hunt, and then the lighter purple is called North Wind. I cast this on last fall, and my goal was to finish it for Halloween of last year. A couple different things went wrong. Oh, hey kitty cat. The kitty cat just woke up and she's off. So I cast this on last fall and I wanted it to be done for Halloween. So I initially started it with the recommended needles. Did I swatch? No, I did not. I feel like I've kind of learned to be better, but not always. I tend to swatch a lot more than I used to. And so for this, I did not swatch. I started the color work and I looked at my yoke, I looked at my sweater and I was like, that's not okay. It looked way too big and I decided to frog it and start over. So I went down a needle size or two and I also went down a size. So I went from a size 4 to a size 3 and my main body needle is a 3mm and I think the recommended is a 3.5. I use 3.25 for my color work and I think 2.75 for the rolled stockinette. I basically had knit all the way to here and frogged it. So that was, I don't know, a week or two's work, maybe more. I'm not sure how fast I did it last time in the toilet. And then unfortunately my grandfather passed away in September of last year and so I flew to Puerto Rico and stayed there for a few weeks. I only had a carry-on bag and was not going to bring this with me. I spent most of October there with family since I had just started it over when I left and then I got back on Halloween day. So I decided I would set it aside, pick it back up in September and finish it for Halloween of this year. I picked it back up I think last Friday and I was about here, I believe. I think I had just done the neckline and the short rows and maybe like a row or two of stockinette. And so I had to knit all of this and then into the color work section. And I'm almost done with the color work. I don't know how well you can see it here, but there's actually some pearl stitches here. So there's this kind of almost like triangular or diamond-ish shape made here with pearl stitches. And then we have all like the skulls. The background of the skulls are all pearl stitches. There's pearl stitches to make the eyes and the nose hole. And not the nose hole, is it? What do you call that hole on a skull? I don't know, let's call it the nose hole. After you finish the skulls, you're just going to kind of mirror that back down. So it's going to create this upside down triangle here. After that's done, then it's time to do the little bats and then the color work yoke is done. I think with the fact that I've gone down a needle size and that I'm knitting a size 3 now, I think it's going to be a nice fit. It's hard to try it on properly because I don't have a little barber cord right now, but I think if I have it like this and I pull this part down on my shoulder, I think it lines up pretty well with how it looks on the pattern pictures. So I think my yoke is coming out nicely. I have another new cast on, and it is the Stockholm Slipover V-neck by Petite Knit. And yes, I'm knitting in a neutral color. Who is she? What is she doing? I actually bought this pattern like a year or two ago, and I never knit it because I just couldn't figure out if I would actually wear a slipover sweater vest. Slipover? What is that? You know, like it's a vest. It's a sweater vest. Anyway, I've been sewing a lot more lately, and so I decided that if I keep sewing lots of dresses, a sweater vest would work really nicely with some of them, especially those with larger sleeves, because if they have really big sleeves, then they're not going to work really well with sweaters, potentially. So I decided to bite the bullet and cast this little baby on. Not sure how well you can see from there, but this actually has, I'm not sure if it's stellina or lurex. It's really, really shiny. It's much more than a regular stellina base. Not sure how well you can see it here, because showing sparklies is always really difficult. But my main fingering weight yarn is from a dyer called Woollette, and it is her ballerina base. I've seen her refer to this as Lurex. I've seen her refer to it as stellina. The label says stellina. It says 10% stellina. I think most stellina yarns have 5%, which maybe is why this one is much sparklier. I wouldn't say it's totally black. The colorway is called Blacklisted, and it's a classic fingering weight yardage. I've got 400 meters and it's 100 grams. I would say it's like an almost black. And so to pair with that, I bought mohair from Knitting for Olive in the slate gray colorway, which was the one that's like just before black. Maybe you think that really does look black though. Let me show you something for like comparison's sake. This is a black from Yarn by Simone, another French yarn dyer, and this is her only black colorway. And this is like black. There's a visible difference between the two of these, in my opinion, which is why I decided to go for the slate gray mohair instead of the black. I did do a gauge swatch for this. Where is she? I did a proper little gauge swatch. I wet blocked her and everything, and my gauge was right on point with the recommended needles. And also I find that, you know, thank you Captain Obvious, but the mohair really tones down the sparkle, which makes me a little bit sad, but you can definitely still see the sparkle, though it's nigh on impossible to show on camera. But there is sparkle, I promise. I cast on a size 4. So far, oh, we've got light again. Hopefully this fluctuating light doesn't bother you guys too much. And so far what I've done, I did the back, it's just knit top down. You knit the back, then you pick up for the left front. You do the left front. At first you're only increasing here, and then you start increasing on both sides. And then you do the same thing on the right front. So that is where I am at this point. Now I need to start increasing on both sides. Once that's done, I think I join in the round after that. However, if I fold this here, I have never knit with a black or close to black yarn before. Or technically I have knit with black, but it was on my Elf Mel sweater that I did. It's like a all over broken seed stitch, and one of my colors was black. And this is like all over pretty much black. It's definitely a lot harder to see what you're doing in the light of day. Helps. But for example, for every increase, as I'm increasing, I'm putting stitch markers. So I don't have to struggle to count like, oh, how many increases have I done? I can just easily count my stitch markers. When I had to pick up the stitches along the shoulders here, it was definitely a little bit of a challenge. There was a lot of like, okay, is that a row? No, I can't tell. Like trying to hold it to the light and like, wait, no, that doesn't help. But I eventually got it done. It just adds a little bit of a challenge, but it's not that bad. I'm excited for this. I think it's gonna be really cute, and I'm gonna have to sew some more cute little dresses to wear with it. All right. One. Yes? Okay. Thank you for your contribution. You wanna say hello? Come here. Come here. Oh my goodness. Hello. This is Colleen. She came here to scream. Are you gonna let me finish? I'm almost done, okay? Okay? Go on. I have one baby whip to show you guys, and it is this. So really, a baby whip. This is going to be the Floating Magnolias Tee sweater. I don't remember what the exact name is, or maybe it's just Floating Magnolias by Tina Say. As you can see, my yarn looks like ramen noodles. That's because I did some stupids. First of all, the yarn that I'm using is from Bazaar. And these are the two magnificent colors. So this is her velour colorway, and this is her boreal colorway. So we've got this gorgeous, really nuanced, amazing purple It goes dark, it goes light, like it has a lot of light in it, I find also. It almost glows. It's really, really beautiful. And then we've got this like really funky green that definitely has a bit of blue in it, but it's not like a tea. It's not quite teal, I would say, but it's brighter than mint. I'm not sure what you would call this color. And this also has some neon specks, and it's got a bit of undyed going on also. And this combination is amazing. This dyer, Pauline, she makes videos here on YouTube, and she introduced me. She introduced me to this color combination. She shared that a customer of hers had knit one of the Caitlin Hunter like Alpine Bloom sweaters with this combination, using this as the contrast and this as the main. And as soon as I saw that picture, I was like, oh my God, I need those two colors and I need to put them together. They looked so good. She then later went on to knit a shawl with these two colors and then a third one. And it just, like the two colors, they just look so good together. So when she opened up pre-orders a few weeks ago, I was like immediately like, yes, I'm buying 2 skeins of this, 1 of this. I don't know what I'll make, but it will be something. And then I got the idea to knit the floating magnolias. I bought the pattern a week or 2 ago. You know, I told you that sometimes, like, I've gotten better at swatching, but not always. This is what I'm talking about here. And so the pattern says that it is a gauge of 24 stitches in garter stitch. So what did I do? I looked at the shawl that I recently finished in garter stitch. I measured my garter stitch gauge and adjusted my needle size based on that information, right? And so my sorbetto shawl I knit using a 3.75 millimeter needle, and I had a gauge of 20 stitches per 40 rows. This pattern calls for 24 stitches per 40 rows. So I went down a couple needle sizes to try to get that stitch gauge, and I started. And I'll put a picture because you can see like how far I got. And I realized that quite a few things had gone wrong. First of all, because this is actually a slip stitch pattern, you can't really compare the gauge to a regular garter stitch. So my project was way too small. I could barely fit the neck opening over my neck, and it was like very tight over my neck. I also realized that I had split for the front and the back incorrectly. So I cast on size 2, I think. And she has you cast on 90 stitches and then distribute more stitches to the front than to the back. And I remember like last year hearing someone talking about maybe her frequency or her wavelength sweater, same designer, and how she has you do that same thing, like more stitches in the front than on the back, which I recently learned that usually for a sewing pattern, you have 2 centimeters more of fabric in the front than for the back. So it kind of follows that same logic, you know, because you have more projection in the front, you have boobs, you need more things, like more things take up more fabric. So it does make sense. However, I was quite sick when I started, and, you know, I already have issues paying attention to patterns sometimes. Okay, so my phone died on me while I was in the middle of a sentence. I plugged it in, I let it charge about 20%, I had a cinnamon roll, and now we're back. I was saying that on my floating magnolias, I had split my stitches incorrectly. Instead of doing 40 for the back and 50 for the front, I did 45-45. So, first mistake. Well, second mistake after the gauge issue. Second mistake had to do with the increases and my incomprehension, I think, of the way things were explained or really omitted, I think, because I'm not sure if my current understanding is correct, but it's what makes sense to me now looking at it. In the pattern, when you're increasing, and so you're increasing, creating this leaf shape, she just says M1. She doesn't say make one right or make one left, M1. And then in the abbreviations, it says, you know, make one increase, not necessarily meaning leaning right or left. And I was a little confused. I was like, but it has to lean right or left, right? Okay, well, let's just pick one of them. I don't remember which one I did, and use that because there's no other indication. Later, I realized is that I should probably be either using a make one left at some places and a make one right at other places. So I guess third mistake. I don't know. I'm not sure because it's not explained. But I think that's it. And then, not really a mistake, but a change that I want to make. The t-shirt has no short rows. It's a fairly open neckline once you have the right gauge, but I still want to add short rows. Originally looked online and I came across some blog posts explaining how to add short rows, and it just left me feeling confused. I don't know, like the information was not penetrating into my brain. I was just like, I still don't understand what I need to do. And I found some videos from Knit Talk here on YouTube. She's a tech editor. She does a lot of videos on knitting and explaining how to do things with like diagrams and math and all of that stuff. And I watched 2 of her videos about short rows and it clicked. It worked. So I was able to plan out and calculate my short rows. So once I get to the end of the ribbing, since I don't think I could do the short rows in the slip stitch pattern, I'm going to do the short rows in the ribbing so I don't have a plain stockinette like wedge in the back, because that would just look weird. And I've seen that there are some patterns that have you do the short row in the ribbing, especially with textured knits and stuff like that, so I think it should work quite nicely. There was also something that I was kind of unsure about or confused about in the pattern. In some of the rows, when you're slipping your stitches, she just uses slip, like SL. In some others, she says slip with yarn in the back. However, I don't see a difference here. Like, unless a pattern tells you to slip with yarn in the front, I always slip with yarn in the back. So, no idea. But I'm just slipping with the yarn in the back for all of them, and you know, if anyone knows why there would be a difference there, please do let me know. I think that's pretty much all I had to say. I don't remember what I said, and I don't want to be blabbing on for too long, so I don't want my phone to die again. I only let it charge about 20%. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you enjoyed our time together. If you are not subscribed and you liked this video and you want to keep seeing my videos, please do smash that subscribe button. And if you liked this video, don't forget to click on that like button, you know, give me a little thumbs up, and leave me a comment down below if you'd like. If you have answers to my questions, if you want to let me know what you were working on while you watch this, it's always interesting to know what my viewers are making. I will leave you now. Have a great day. Happy knitting. Bye bye.